am Lukendra Purush Dahal, Executive Director of Center for Nepal Studies UK, and I will be moderating today's session. Before we get started, there are some housekeeping announcements and few reminders. This event is being recorded, which is also live streamed on Facebook and will later be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Please kindly remain muted at all times, unless you are invited to speak. This is basically just to avoid any audio disruptions during the process. At all times, we welcome your questions and comments via the chat box throughout the session. Please feel free to post them as they come into your mind. We need the active mind working. The presentation and discussion will primarily be conducted in English. This is to accommodate our diverse audiences, including non-Nepali participants. Now, let me introduce the speaker. Our speaker for today is Dr. Ganga Dahal, who will be presenting on a very timely and increasingly urgent topic. The topic is the climate crisis in Nepal calls for urgent action to build resilience. Dr. Dahal is not only a senior research associate who is involved with Center for Nepal Studies UK, but he's also a long-standing colleague and a respected international expert, basically international consultant working at FAO in United Nations. He has worked in the field of sustainable natural resource governance. He has extensive knowledge on forest and land tenure policy, climate change. He has worked in Nepal within the RED, biodiversity and community resilience projects. He has more than 20 years of experience across deltas of Vietnam to hills of Nepal. A couple of other countries like Indonesia, China, and India are also his work area. He has worked extensively with international, bilateral, and intergovernmental organizations. His career spans research, capacity building, project leadership, and global policy advocacy, particularly focusing on the rights of indigenous people and the very local communities within there. With that brief but very, very inspiring introduction, I'm pleased to hand over the virtual floor to Dr. Ganga Dahal. Dr. Dahal, you have approximately 30 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you.
Is always fine, as we are also keen to engage in a very meaningful dialogue during the question and answering sessions, which follows after your talk. Dr. Dahal, over to you.
Thank you so much for the brief introduction. Of course, it was elaborative, not a brief actually. Now I have, first I would like to apologize for the delays in technical issues because there was setting problem in the Zoom system. Now we are on. The presentations I have prepared for targeting 30 minutes, but it may go a little bit longer than that. So let's see how it unfolds. Let me start. First, I would like to welcome all in this presentation, the series of CNS UK webinar. As Lukendra Purush Dahal mentioned about the topic, it is basically the climate crisis in Nepal and some issues of urgent actions that Nepal need to take it on immediately. So you can see in the first, the photographs of the, the first page of the PowerPoint slide is a General Secretary of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, who was in Nepal in last year in 2024 at the Annapurna base camps, looking on this impact of climate change in the Himalayas region. So it can also indicate that how serious issue is and how the international community is taking Nepal climate crisis. Let me start with the outline of my presentation. Within 30 minutes, I will be covering 5 basic topics, starting with a little bit brief context. Then I'll move on the state of climate change, looking at Nepal, a little bit relating to the global scenario as well, and initiatives and mechanisms, including the financial mechanisms related to climate change that I will address global level, and also a little bit more focusing on Nepal's case. Practical examples will be shared, looking at one of these Green Climate Fund supported project and climate change, building resilience in Churia region. And finally, there will be some strategic issues, priority action, and key messages of this presentation. So hopefully, with 30 minutes, I will be able to manage all this. Let me start with the triple planetary crisis, which is very common these days globally, these 3 crises, but they are very much interrelated: climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. So any actions related to these issues, these crises, are very much linked. And these are considered as the main 3 crises that humanity is facing these days at global level. When you talk about
Gangaji,
Mute was mute.
Gangaji, you went mute. Please unmute.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Can you
now
hear
it's
me
okay.
now? Okay.
Now it's okay.
So the climate change, there are lots of effects that we are facing, but basically 2 important points. One is the more than 21 million people are displaced annually by climate change, which is huge in terms of scale. And also the GDP, the economy also adversely affected by the climate change. The 18% of the GDP is lost by the whole economy due to climate change, which is again a significant percentage of the GDP is lost. So that's why it is crisis. In terms of biodiversity loss, there are many cases where the species, particularly in the Himalayas and mid-hill areas of many countries, including Nepal, the many species are in the verge of extinction if we do not do any initiative or effort to protect them. And deforestation and pollution and climate change are causing biodiversity loss. So it's all these issues, 3 the issues are so much connected. And in terms of air pollution, it's mainly related with the health issue, because the largest cause of disease, as WHO mentioned, 99% of the people who are breathing current air is not of that standard. So it means again that cause lots of people's life because of the air pollution. So all these 3 crises are there. At the same time, the action plans of any of these issues, the concern, are very much contributing and complementing each other. Let me start with the major greenhouse gas emitter, as I shared in the air pollution. So one of the the pollution of the air is caused by the greenhouse gas emitting in the environment. So who are the major emitter and who are the major victims? I think it is a good entry point to start our discussion today, because the greenhouse gas is the major cause of the climate change that we all are facing, the impact of climate change adversely. So that's because of the burning of fossil fuels, gas, and oils, and also change in the land use practices, including deforestation. So when you look at the top 10 greenhouse gas emitters countries, China, USA, India, EU, Russia, Japan, Brazil, Indonesia, Iran, and Canada, they actually contribute over 2/3 of the total global emissions. So we can imagine, like, who are the major emitters of the greenhouse gas causing climate change at global level. And when you scroll down a little bit further, then we can see that there are top 3 greenhouse gas emitters: China, USA, and India. They contribute 42%, more than 42%. Almost half of the total emission is by 3 countries. So again, we can, more specifically can say that these 3 countries are the major polluter of the global climate change issue. And when you look at the Nepal, because our concern is more on the Nepal issue, the greenhouse gas emission contribution is very insignificant, is 0.05%, the latest data by Ministry of Forest and Environment, but facing negative effect of the climate change more seriously than others. So this is the situation. Then we probably need to take this status on during our discussion further. So when you look at the carbon emission, because when you disaggregate the component of the greenhouse gas, the CO2 occupies more than 90% of the greenhouse gas composition. That's why it is important to understand how much CO2 emission is being done by the countries like China. We can see China occupies the major portion of this CO2 emission, that's 29%, whereas United States with the 15%, European Union 12%, and rest with the other countries. It means again, China, USA, and India looks like the major emitter of the CO2 at global level. Now the key question here is, industrial countries are the polluters. We can see from these data, these figures. But the impact of climate change makes poor, mainly the least developed countries and developing countries, most vulnerable. So the question is it fair? Is it just? That we need to debate further. Now I want to move on this climate change crisis, particularly in Nepal. Why it is crisis? I want to little bit link on this historical evolution of the agenda of crisis, the eco disaster in the Himalayan region. Immediately after the World War II, this degradation, Himalayan degradation idea, the concept was highlighted 60s and 70s, and it was further amplified after the emergence of a theory of environmental crisis in Himalayas, mainly associated with the work of Eric on Losing Ground publication. So what Eric is arguing at that time was there will be an increasing population growth in upland in the Himalayan region, and there will be deforestation followed by the landslide and downstream flooding and sedimentation. That will have a major implication and challenge shifting in Ganges, Brahmaputra river plain and deltas, which will eventually contribute on the rise of the sea level, even in India and Bangladesh at that scale. Now, what is the state of climate change? At global level, I would like to give one picture scenario like 2024 was the first calendar year to go more than 1.5 degrees Celsius average temperature, which is a threshold agreed by all countries, and not to go beyond 1.5 degree centigrade Celsius temperature rise. However, 2024 crossed that limit. So that means like it crossed the average rise in temperature, which was set for the pre-industrial baseline between 1850 to 1900. So again, a diagram I am presenting here is something a Earth System Research did since 1862 to 2016. So you can see the CO2 concentration in the environment is gradually increasing. There is no point of declining CO2 so far. It means the trend is something like that. However, in Nepal, the total average annual maximum temperature rise is 0.05 degrees Celsius, as given by the Department of Hydrology and Meteorology. But the projection is a little bit serious in terms of the increments. 1.8 degrees Celsius by 2050, which is not too far. And also by 2080, it is projected that it will remain between 1.2 to 4.2 under the highest emission scenario. This is the report from the research finding from the World Bank and Oxfam. So one interesting research done by one Chinese researcher, Liu Chen, and that was the research done for 30 years, continually 30 years, did a research on what is the trend of temperature increment in the higher altitude and the lower altitude. And it looks like, the temperature increases more in higher altitude than in lower elevation. So that that probably is one evidence we can see, like Himalayan peaks are warming faster than global average, causing rapid snow and ice melting in the mountains and forming glacial lake. I'll come a little bit later about detail on this. What is the occurrence level of the climate-induced disaster? At global level, the scenario shows that, like, there are lots of the disasters enlisted, but mainly the flood occupies the major portion, followed by the landslide and epidemic and extreme temperature. However, for the Nepal, the most important in recent days and occupies the major portion is the fast melting glaciers, causing glacier lake formation and glacier lake outburst flooding, known as GLOF. Is very serious problem in the Himalayan range, including the Nepal Himalayan range. So erratic rainfall, flooding, and landslide, like other countries, water scarcity, heat waves, air pollution, and strong wind and wildfires are some of the disasters identified very commonly occurring in Nepal. So,
Ganga sir, your
yes,
video is not on. Therefore, could you please, just for the benefit of others, none of us are viewing your picture. Therefore, is it okay to turn on the video?
I've turned on the video, but I don't know what happened.
Oh, is it? Okay, okay. Please carry on, if you have already done so.
Okay. I would like to overview on the state of climate-induced disaster in Nepal. As I said, the glacier lake outburst is a major perennial threat. So interestingly, Nepal occupies 21 dangerous glacial lake out of 47 identified potentially dangerous for the global level. So it means we are in the verge of the serious implication of this glacier lake outburst. So on the current emission pathways, it continues like this, and 80% of the glacier's volume will be gone by 2100. So it is again the IPCC, the UNFCCC mechanism. I'll a little bit explain about this mechanism later. So IPCC 2023 report saying that the 80% of the glacier volume will be gone by 2100. Then there will be simply left with a bare rock. There is no more glacier, ice covered, snow-covered the mountain in Nepal. So we can see one example. This is just an example of Saipal Mountain in the far western Nepal. So the picture taken in 2008 October, and we can compare the last, the third picture on the October 2020. I think it's 20. Yes, within 12 years' time, you can see the changes. And in the same month, the photographs were taken. So it means there is a significant loss of the glacier lake in the Himalayas of Nepal that we need to really consider as a serious situation. Now, so similarly, there are rainfall pattern changes, and increasing water scarcity is another issue that most of the village peoples they are facing, the scarcity of water. One example is a Samdang village in Mustang, which is completely abandoned these days because of not having any water for irrigation and not even for the drinking. So it means they have to leave their place, the native places, and moving somewhere else. So the rainfall pattern is so unusual and unpredictable, causing lots of problems. And the recent one, the landslide and the flooding. Last year in September 2024, there was unpredictable heavy rain within 3 days of time. So that caused a major, the devastating effect in terms of the life and the structure and the agricultural land in Nepal, which is calculated as almost more than 425 million US dollar equivalent. So there are other disasters which are also commonly occurring these days is air pollution. As I said earlier, the three, the different issues globally people are facing, and that air pollution is the one. That is one example, the research done by the University of Chicago in 2025, very recent one. The Kathmandu air rose from 17.87 microgram pollutant, that is like ozone, per cubic meter to now it is 31.33 microgram. It means it's almost double within 24 years time. That research finding indicate that the vulnerability will continue even worsening the situation in Kathmandu and other major metropolitan cities in Nepal. The heat wave is another one, but interestingly, heat wave is not only because of Nepal's issues, but also because of the northern India, which is a source of heat waves coming from northern India that is causing air pollution and heat waves very commonly in Tarai region. Similarly, there is an increasing wildfire occurrence in recent years. Studies done by one of the institutions, the far side Nepal, that said, like, the wildfire in Nepal currently is the state will be increased by 12% by 2030 and 30% by 2050 and 50% by the end of the century. So it means, like, there is no point of decreasing. It is again connected with the climate crisis worsening in the Himalayas region. So there is lots of the data from IPCC saying that the biodiversity loss is very seriously affecting the environment in Himalayan range, and it says that the report says that the mountain species are found with the verge of extinction almost about 84%. So it means, like, this again a serious situation affected by the climate change. There are other issues. Intensity and extent of strong wind is another issue. So some of the example we can say, very recent incidents in Lumbini, 5 people were died because of the strong wind. They were affected. So it means these are some of the examples, but such situation is occurring across Nepal in many incidences. So now I would like to come with the factors amplifying the effect of climate change. The burning of fossil fuel is one of the cause of the major cause of the climate change, but that is amplified by other issues. For example, deforestation is the one which is still is happening in Nepal, 0.9% per year. That is leading to the land degradation. It's not only the deforesting area, but also the degrading the land. So that again, the create a situation where the greenhouse gas emission will be increased. Increased urbanization, converting land for the other purposes, and then overuse of natural resources, particularly in Tarai, the stone and the sand mining is a very common phenomenon unfolding that is causing environmental loss there. Unsustainable farming practices, the agricultural practices, unsustainable harvesting of timber and non-timber, the increased frequency and extent of forest fire, as I said earlier. So industrial emission, although Nepal is not having a major industries, but some of the industries still emitting some greenhouse gas, like cement factories and the brick kiln, but it's very insignificant. But transportation, particularly the vehicle carbon emission, is very common in Nepal to the release greenhouse gas. There are external factors, as I said, the India and China, they are neighbors, but also they have contributed loss in terms of the greenhouse gas emission, such as air pollution and heat waves coming from northern India, and then snow melting in the Himalayas is contributed by the scale of CO2 emission, as I said earlier, 29% by the China, the global emission. So that will definitely have effect in the temperature rise in the Himalayan region of Nepal. Now the question is, what global communities and Nepal are doing to address climate change agenda? So I just want to take you around and the quick look on those initiatives, mechanism, and including the financial mechanism. So they are for the addressing climate change. So key initiative, I don't want to take much time on it. As we all know, probably the Kyoto Protocol is the first initiative in 1997 to take forward the climate change agenda, followed by the Bonn Challenge in 2011. Restoring our future was the slogan at that time. And more importantly, 2015 is a major milestone causing climate agreement, the Paris Agreement, which is a very popular Paris Agreement, which is legally binding agreement for all countries. So those sign that agreement. And Sendai framework is in Japan, which was in 2015. Again, for the 15 years of disaster risk reduction plan were developed in that Sendai framework. And obviously, of course, the United Nations is also emphasizing restoration, as they call the 2020 to 2030 as a decade of ecosystem restoration. And also the sustainable development goals, all those goals are related with the climate change. Now, again, the question is, what are the institutional mechanisms? These are the frameworks, but what are the institutions? Are they really operating on the ground? So at global level, UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, is a coordinating body, followed by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change called IPCC. Is a very popular intellectual, professional, technical expertise team working for the working in IPCC, and then Conference of Parties, a COP, commonly known as COP. Every year, all these parties, the countries, they come together and discuss about what is the status, what are the issues, challenges, what are the progress made, and what can or what should we do for those are the three key mechanism, institutional mechanism at global, and based on this, every country they develop their commitment. For Nepal, the institutionally Ministry of Forest and Environment is the one taking lead on climate change, and lots of policies and strategies developed. I don't want to go into detail, but in the federal system, so now the local adaptation plan of action at the local municipality level is also in practice. So they have developed this local adaptation plan of action to address the climate change at local level, and same thing at the national and provincial level. What is the resources they have? Do they have resources to do all these things? Now, this is very good question, probably. So if you look on this one scenario of 2011 to 2021, the total amount that Nepal received is 5.71 billion US dollar, but mostly from the banks. The Multilateral Development Bank occupies 53% of that fund. So however, UNFCCC, the grant is only 7%, and the remaining 30% is bilateral and other multilateral. So it means the amount Nepal receives is basically from the loan. Now, the question is whether the poor and vulnerable communities and IPs have access to this fund. Can Nepal afford large scale of loan like this? And should we use the loan to address the climate change, which is not our own region to create? And is the climate finance equitable and fair?
Just for the benefit, Dr. Dahal, just for the benefit of the audiences, I think we are reaching to the 30 minutes time limit. I think we need to expedite. Thank you.
Yeah, let me quickly go on. The Global Climate Fund, UNFCCC mechanism, Nepal is using this mechanism to get climate funding. The Green Global Environment Fund is the one, the Least Developed Countries Fund is one other, the Special Climate Change Fund, Adaptation Fund, Green Climate Fund, and then Loss and Damage Fund. So all these are UNFCCC mechanism, the category of the funding, but Nepal is having only one fund, both for the climate adaptation and mitigation, the Green Climate Fund. I just want to quickly go on the example that how the Green Climate Fund intervention is working to address climate mitigation and adaptation in Nepal, mainly in the Churia region. So it's a practical example of adaptation and mitigation. So most of the funds are only for adaptation, but this is the one, the Green Climate Funds contribute in this adaptation and mitigation both. So the funding is Green Climate Fund is the 47 million funding for 7 years with the objective to build the resilient Churia region with the adaptation activities and mitigation activities, mainly riverbank system stabilization, the conservation pond for the water recharging in many places in the Churia region, controlling gullies and other, the landslide areas with the nature-based solution, climate resilience agriculture, known as CRA, and sustainable natural resource management, including capacity building as a part of the adaptation. And similarly, the plantation and the forest landscape restoration called FLR, and woodlot plantation in the private lands for the sequestration of the carbon. So that's for the mitigation. So these are the intervention, and why it is important region for Nepal, because the Churia is a very vulnerable and fragile, having a fragile landscape, and the projection saying that the temperature will rise up to 4 degrees Celsius in Churia region, and also the reduced post-monsoon area, increasing dry days and increasing extreme rainfall and monsoons. So these are the situation in Churia as compared to the other region. It is very sensitive in terms of climate. So seasonal water stress is there, extended dry period, and increased frequency and intensity of the flood damaging agricultural land, household, and public assets. So also the soil erosion is a very common phenomenon in Tarai, lowland, and degradation, sedimentation, riverbank cutting, and then flooding. All these are the factors. That's why the project, the Green Climate Fund project, is supporting to build the resilience of the Churia region through riverbank stabilization. So, lots of river systems in Churias are vulnerable, critical. That's why the GCF is supporting to stabilize those, and mainly based on this bioengineering and the nature-based solution. So this is one example. We can see before and after. I'll have some photographs here, the before and after, the situation of the intervention of the GCF-supported climate resilient building project. And also the water recharging is a very common intervention in many places, many districts, many villages. The water recharging conservation pond construction is ongoing. This is one of the example in Ulavar, in Morang, we can see. And also the implementation of the forest management plan in order to really have a sustainable management of forest resources and retain biodiversity. It's an example of before how was the situation and after what is the situation. And also the natural regeneration protection, particularly in the areas where there is a possibility of natural regeneration coming. So you can see the earlier it was occupied, covered completely by the invasive species called Mycania. Now it is, the regeneration is naturally coming, and the soil regeneration is an example of one, site in Bardivas in Madhes. So now the question is politically, of course, the problem is there, the finance is there, but still there is a politically climate change is not moving forward because it's a political issue, it's an economical issue. The industrial countries, they are trying to weigh this. What is the, what is the benefit of the, putting mitigation target and doing economic development from industrial promotion of the industrial activities. So even the Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement is not signed by the USA so far. So it's again, which is one of the major emitter and pollutant of the climate change greenhouse gas. So similarly, other countries are also not signing the Paris Agreement so far. So polluters pay is a concept actually. It is accepted by all, but rarely happen in practice. This is again a political issue. Industrial countries pleased to support climate vulnerable, least developed countries. However, in many cases, it never happened. For example, a good example of the Glasgow, the COP26 in the UK in 2021, they pledged the developed industrial countries, they pledged to support 100 billion US dollar per year to the least developed countries. However, the outcome is almost nothing. So we can imagine, like, things how it is politically, maneuvering the situation. A carbon credit scheme is simply a magical thinking and political maneuvering of industrial nations to save their face, which is too complicated and difficult even to materialize in practice. And equity and fairness are the issues still unresolved in terms of climate carbon credit. So what the strategy Nepal is taking? Can I take 4 or 5 minutes more?
Okay, you can go ahead and complete it. Thank you.
Basically, we can see the Sagarmatha Samvad was the one they at national level concluded in 18th of May 2025, very recently, releasing 25-point call to action to save the Himalayas mainly. And the similar event was happening in 2024 for the Mountain People Climate Nexus, the dialogue of the climate change expert, global expert. Nepal also adopted a green, resilient, inclusive development, the GREED approach, GRIED, GREED approach, as a national long-term vision, mainly focusing on the resilience. And in 2009, there was a cabinet meeting held in the Sagarmatha base camp in Kalapathar, expressing the solidarity to fight against climate change. So there are some of the advocacy event undertaking in Nepal, but there is more to do because the Nepal need to access Global Climate Fund for a long run for the very specific action and target areas, and also need to involve the local government. In the federalism, the local government are the one who are directly connected with the people and nature. So that's why their application will be more sustainable and effective. We need to revisit existing policies and institutions that should match with the changing need and priorities. and also strengthening Nepal position on global negotiation as the most vulnerable countries. The good news is like a day before yesterday, there was a Green Climate Fund approved a 36 million US dollar to protect for those vulnerable glacier lakes, which is again a very good news for Nepal. So still there are 16 more such, the glacier lakes still in a verge of, getting outburst. And strategy in terms of global advocacy is still need to be developed, because at the moment they are doing an ad hoc basis, but there should be a very clear country strategy for global advocacy. What are the priority action? I think adaptation and mitigation are the two, the major pillar of the climate resilience building. As I said, eco-friendly infrastructure for the adaptation and then climate resilience agriculture, the nature-based solutions, and disaster risk reduction plan and its application effectively from the local government. Some of the the intervention I have mentioned here, but there are more. In terms of mitigation, mainly Nepal should move on climate smart energy solution. That, what does it mean? It means like hydro, solar, biogas, wind, and others. So that will not really burn the the carbon. And also the climate resilient transportation. Electric vehicles started, maybe hydrogen vehicles will come soon. So those need to be promoted. And forest landscape restoration to sequestrate carbon from the environment, and the plantation wherever it is possible. I think these are some of the points. So what is the key message? This is my last slide. So the key message of this overall scenario presentation is probably first one is Nepal is having a little or no contribution on greenhouse gas if you compare the global contribution, but most vulnerable LDC country facing the crisis of climate change. So we need to think about it. We need to think about its equity and fairness issues. And also developed countries, mainly the industrial countries, who are main contributor of the greenhouse gas emissions, but are having their fast economic growth. Hence, they must compensate vulnerable nations like Nepal an adequate and predictable and accessible fund, not only promising, but also in actual sense that need to provide those funds and should flow climate vulnerable countries as a right, but not as a compassion from the industrial countries. Getting loan to address climate agenda is not fair for the least developed countries because their economy is so weak and they cannot really reimburse that loan to those funding agencies. So Himalayan region is a particularly critical region, and that demands the urgent action to protect glacier, vis-a-vis protecting land, biodiversity, people across upstream and downstream. And have a climate resilient people and ecosystem. Nepal must develop adaptive capacity to cope with the climate-induced disaster, as I said quickly, overviewing what are those disasters are, and also integrating water, agriculture, and forest could be the strategic intervention. Finally, the climate change is a common global agenda, which is mainly caused due to anthropogenic regions. Of course, there are other regions too, but it's mainly because of anthropogenic region. Therefore, it is possible to build resilience through collective commitment and accountability by the changing behavior and practices of human beings and countries, which is vital to protect our nature, at the same time people, and address agenda of climate change. So this is all. That's what I have to present. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Dahal, for that very enlightening and thought-provoking presentation. Now I think we are open.
Yeah.
We want to open the floor. Sorry?
Last slide, I just aired yesterday because day before yesterday, the European Commission has proposed their, the commitment for the greenhouse gas reduction 90% by 2040 in 3rd July. So it means after 10 years of Paris Agreement, they come with this target. So you can imagine how sluggish the industrial countries are in terms of, addressing climate change. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, now the floor is open for question and answering session. Please feel free to type. I think you have already done. I can see a couple of questions already there. You can start typing on the chat box if you haven't already done so. I will now like to direct Dr. Dahal to the question. from Krishna ji. I don't know whether it is Krishna Upadhyay or somebody, but it says Krishna iPhone. Anyway, the question is, how is this climate change is being addressed by the Nepal government policies and programs
Mhm.
through any recurring programs and any budget supply?
Mhm.
I would like to answer that.
Okay. I think I was a little bit quick on that slide because of time
Uh-huh.
factor.
Yeah, don't
Uh,
worry. You can always come back and bring it.
yeah. So can you see this slide?
Mhm.
Institutional mechanism to address climate change commitment from Nepal. Mm, So thank you for the question. Actually, Nepal is trying to do lots of things at the same time, mainly looking at this, the nationally determined commitment that is called NDC. Once you agree on this framework, every nation they have to develop their nationally determined commitment. They call it NDC. So Nepal prepared a third nationally determined commission, very recently approved by the government. That is third, covering 2025 to 35. It's a 10 years period commitment of the Nepal. So that shows the real commitment that Nepal would like to address climate agenda. And also there are lots of other institutional and policy framework like climate change policy was formed in 2019, and also the RED Plus policy, which is again national level. RED Plus policy is a very instrumental in terms of the carbon credit
Yes,
scheme to
correct.
address and get benefit for the Nepal. And a national adaptation plan is another long-term plan that covers 2021 to 50. So it's 30 years, almost 30 years plan. So that is prepared. National adaptation plan, the NAP, and local adaptation plan of action. It's called LAPA, which is for the local government. And that has been unfolding in most of the municipalities in Nepal. So the PPA. So they have some budget, and in terms of budget, as I said, Nepal is having a certain amount, but the question is to what extent that has been used. If you look on this in terms of billion US dollar, it's huge, like a 5.71 billion US dollar within 10 years time. It's not bad in terms of amount, in terms of scale, but still, what is the the real use of this fund and impact on the adaptive capacity of the people? Is it really contributing in that line, in that direction? Or it is just using that money in a not really the areas which is supposed to be developing capacity of the local communities, adaptive capacity, and reducing the mitigation emission. So this is a question, this is my question as well. So we need to do a little bit of research on it. So what is the use of this? So I can simply say the Green Climate Fund project, where I am associated with. Actually, I'm technically supporting that project. That's why I know what the areas that money is using, the 47 million US dollar. But for rest of this, the development bank, the amount, which is the huge chunk of money coming from the bank for the climate change agenda, that is a big gray area for me.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dal. I think it's a very satisfying answer. Now I come to the second question from Dr. Sangeeta Shrestha. She
Yeah.
inquires whether what role do you see with the youth's innovation or community-led solutions in building climate resilience in Nepal over the next decade?
Could you please repeat the first part?
What role do you see for the youth's innovations or
You.
community-led solutions in building climate resilience?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is very important question actually in terms of youth involvement in climate change. Again, huge. Like I can share the example of this my project in Nepal, like Green Climate Fund project, which that is exactly what we want to really make aware of the youth. So that's why the project started a general, the massive awareness program in the school, the youth, about climate change, the environment, and the building resilience. What is adaptation? What is mitigations? How we can really contribute on this, the effort, the initiatives, those kind of uh, awareness messages is given across most of the schools in the Churia regions, involving them, preparing them, getting ready for their contributions after they you know grown up, or even while they are child, they are youth, they are also uh, could contribute in terms of addressing these issues at local level. So that is one point. The second is, so there are lots of other initiatives included in the local adaptation plan of action called LAPA, and it's basically indigenous people, youth, women, and disadvantaged communities are all included in this LAPA program, the LAPA scheme, the local adaptation plan of action, and where they can take a part in the decision making and also in the action. So probably the LAPA is another, the possible areas of youth involvement in terms of addressing climate change agenda and contribute toward developing adaptive capacity and reduce the emission.
Over the decade. Okay.
Yeah, over the decade, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Dahal. Now I think I will just combine two questions in one.
Okay.
This is from Krishna Adhikari and Naresh Kapangi Magar.
Okay.
I think the question revolves around the context of right-wing, dangerous right-wing pathways in political sense in the Western countries, which is characterized by a dismal climate change issue on one hand, and in other, the defense spending is constantly going upward,
Mhm.
and then the cost of international development is going down. Therefore, what will be the fate of global action, basically the funding for mitigating this climate crisis that you talked over the last
Yeah,
20 minutes?
very
And
timely
basically, let me
question.
add, and let me add with the same question so that we don't have to come back again. Naresh Kapangi ji wants to emphasize that the Trump's drill baby drill should also be impacting. Therefore, how would you see the climate will be impacted by this sort of right-wing policies?
Mhm. You know, I think we need to link a little bit with the Paris Agreement again, Kyoto Protocol. So you see, even the European Commission just day before yesterday agreed on the setting the target for the mitigation, which is which is a good example of how they have put less preference or the priorities in the climate agenda. Because once they put the climate agenda as a priority, and they have to do something, they have to show, because every year there will be a conference of parties and they need to tell the international communities what they did. So that's why they don't want to, down their face in the conference of parties. That's why they don't want to set the target. The US, the same thing. US said, no, I don't know. Even the Donald Trump is saying that climate change is not real, so it's a fake. So I I'm sure that Donald Trump will never agree on the Paris Agreement, and he will not allocate any budget for the addressing climate change agenda in terms of mitigation or even adaptation. So this is
A couple of
probably
European leaders are also along that line, though.
yes, European leader, because as Krishna ji mentioned, like the money they have to divert into the war, either in the Ukraine war or the Israel-Iran war. So there are the multiple areas that government put their priorities, not the climate change as the priorities. The climate change is they realize internally, they know that this is an issue, we need to work collectively, but they don't want to put money on it. They want to ask the least developed countries, the poor countries and third world countries, to do for them, the sequestrate carbon from the plantation, protecting forest, or doing some conservation work. So for that they would like to pay. This is, again, as I said, is simply a magical thing, and they want to maneuver. It's a political maneuvering of the developing countries to the poor, least developed, and developing countries, because that has never happened. We haven't seen even the rate since when it started, the REDD plus. But are there any countries who really benefited from the carbon sale? Are there any countries really getting benefit from this? The pledges they made to pay for the pollution they made to the poor countries who are really facing that challenge. So it's hardly happened. Maybe in a couple of instances, but mainly there is nothing happened. So that's why probably even the development activities, including climate change, money will be reduced, significantly reduced, even in the coming years. So because the war is unfolding, so they need more money for that war.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see any more questions, but I think I have one question to you. I think the takeaway point from your talk is two powerful points, and that's what I see. One is the urgency of the climate governance,
Yep.
which is so important, as you stated, and the local level adaptation strategies. Uh, I'm not sure whether the local level adaptation strategies are in operations, particularly when district risk resilience plan, I have heard that has not been completed in every district. Therefore, how would you like to answer those? And also giving an insight on the technical, financial, and institutional capacity that the current condition of the environmental ministry has now in Nepal.
Thank you so much for the question. Actually, it is a very valid question because when I visited the municipalities, they have developed the disaster risk reduction plan (DRR), which is good actually. That's a very comprehensive plan that cover many things and that include adaptation and mitigation both. However, they are facing problem of resources. They don't have enough resources. They are waiting for the external supports, the local municipalities, the local government. So this is the situation at the moment in Nepal. And also Nepal's federalism is in transition. I can say that because the resources is still, stuck at the central level, federal level, or the provincial level, but local levels, they have to generate their own resources, which is, not so much practical in a sense to address the issue of climate change. They have their other priorities. For example, the road construction, for example, drinking water supply, for example, other development activities, schools and health posts and those kind of things. So that's again, how to balance the priority is the issue, the challenge for the local government. But they have prepared a very comprehensive, very good, the document on disaster risk reduction, and also as I said earlier, local adaptation plan of action. That is the one, the basis to really work on at local level to address the climate change agenda. So probably it will take time, but those, the strategies, the plans, whatever they have, prepared at local level will be implemented. If there is some additional resources, they got it, or they can generate revenue at local level. I can say that's up to them.
Yeah, thank you. I think these insights really remind us that the climate change is therefore not just an environmental issue. It is issue with the government, issue with the capacity, issue with the people who are being affected. Therefore, a lot of issues like equity, survival, and justice, and sometimes the smart choices are in forefront. Therefore, I
Of
think
course.
the environmental issues are not that easy. Let me check again if any questions have come in. I
Yes.
don't see much coming. Maybe uh, few people are trying to have some reflections or remarks or comments. I think we'll appreciate your engagement. Otherwise, yeah, I'll give you a time for Dr. Dahal if you have anything to add which you think you missed because I constantly asked you to expedite your presentation. Therefore, we have a few minutes that you can dwell with, maybe for the 5 minutes, 7 minutes in
I
your
mean,
points which you
one
missed.
thing. Yeah, the point actually, initially I was having 47 slides. I reduced because of the time. And in one of the slides, which I really missed, that one is about this is a doable things, which I think we need to give this message to our, at least our participant, our professional team. It's a doable because when you look at this data of the COVID period, like 20 to 22, the emission reduction was significantly down in those 2 years, because at that time there was limited intervention, industrial interventions made by the industrial countries. So that is the reason why the emission was reduced significantly. So that shows that there is a research done by some institutions, some universities, saying that it is doable. We can really maintain or keep balance of the emission if you want, and that is depend on us, like, to what extent we want to really take it seriously and take it into action. Otherwise, every year there will be a COP, the Conference of Parties, and they will discuss the situation, but there will be no, clear pathways for the solution, because the industrial countries, as long as industrial countries, mainly India, China, and USA, if they are not ready to really take it seriously and take action on the ground, things will, prevail still quite longer, the climate agenda, and even the situation will be worsening. And mainly for us, the Himalayan, the glacier lake outburst and flooding will be the even worse in the coming years. So probably from Nepal's point of view, it is important to take this as a priority agenda. Probably government is doing a little bit effort on the advocating this agenda at a global level, the international communities, the seriousness, the situation of the Himalayan region of Nepal. So I think this is doable, but needs a commitment from all.
Good. Yeah, I think
And also,
every bit helps.
I would like to thank you all for listening to me.
No, please, Dr. Dahal, you have one more question. You are not done
Okay.
yet. Therefore, let me direct you another question. This is from Dr.
Okay.
Sushma Bosnet.
Okay.
And also, I see another question coming. Uh, I think before that, let me tell you, Vishnu Ghimire was participating. He is busy. Therefore, he comments your presentation.
Mhm.
Dr. Sushma Basnet asks, with the increased frequency of floods and landslides in Nepal, which we are now facing due to
Yes.
climate change, how is the national disaster response system is adapting currently to protect high-risk communities?
Yes, this is how one of the action point for the government of Nepal to look on this their commitment, nationally determined commitment. What is that commitment? Is like this. For example, how we are stabilizing the slopes, because our topography is a bit complicated than other countries, because the
Hmm,
topography is so diverse and fragile and vulnerable to
very young.
landslide. Yeah, and Yeong, particularly in Churia region, is the Yeong Himalayas, Yeong Mountains. So that probably is the commitment coming from the NDC, the commitment, nationally determined commitment. So that commitment is something legally binding commitment of the government of Nepal, and they should apply it. They should take it forward into action, so that stabilization of the slopes and adopting nature-based solution is a very common intervention in those areas, the nature-based solution called NBS. So probably they need to do it more massively across those areas where the potential flooding and landslides is happening and occurring. So that's how the main, the point of intervention is from the government NDC document, their plan, so that will affect. But the project, they can aid on it, because project cannot cover all countries. For example, the Green Climate Fund project is covering only four. Very recently, the day before yesterday, the 36 million of the project is approved, which is only for four glacier lake outburst protection. So there are still 16, 17 remaining there. So the project can cover the part of it, but the national level, the government should take a lead. That's what I think.
Yeah, you're mentioning 21 GLOF sites, isn't it?
Yeah,
Glacial sites. Yeah. Out
GLOF.
of that, we
Yeah,
have done,
they are
I
in
mean,
Nepal. There are 47 in total. potentially dangerous situation. There are many GLOF, but potentially dangerous one is 21, like Chorol Pass and others. So this means, the government of Nepal should take a responsibility to address all these, not only the waiting for the project to support it, because Nepal's resource need to be used for protecting that. That is particularly important, not only to have the snow and glacier and the mountain, but also to protect people and the land in downstream.
Okay. Thank you. I think there is two more questions, Dr.
Yes.
Dahal.
Yeah.
One is very interesting. I was also thinking on that line. This is from Krishna. I don't know what is his surname. Krishna iPhone, it says. He was saying maybe there is an opportunity for youths, the youngsters, to start learning and earning during their university time with this new climate funds and other kind of issue. Whether the local government has thought of it in their documents, he says. I also think that the green fund, you can apply for green carbon credits through the
Mhm.
municipalities by applying through some green fund forms. That's what I have come across in some news. Therefore, I think maybe there is a way out to, to earn some money. Do
Yeah.
you have any idea on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with that options because there might be many options. That could be one of the options, green fund, which is initially started in some part of the Nepal to create a green fund. But at national level, when you talk about the UNFCCC mechanism, those are the fund. I mentioned the 6 categories of the funding mechanism. And the adaptation fund is the one having those sort of, support at local level. And involve the youth, women, and indigenous people in particular to protect the environment and climate. So I think I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. And very briefly, there is a last question. I would like you answer within maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And this is
Mhm.
again from Krishna Adhikari.
Mhm.
He says that your overall presentation was focusing mostly on the mountain side and hills, but there is also an element of Tarai. Therefore, how would you like to bring that the issue in Tarai with air pollution, which is basically the very hot years coming from the, I think you also made a presentation in your slides that hot year is coming from India. Therefore, an external element coming to contribute to our climate crisis. Therefore, what are those sort of issues and how can they be tackled as a regional issues rather than a unitary country level issue?
I fully agree on that. That's why I say it's a global agenda, a global issue. Even for us, if you do not look on this global level, but if you look on this China and India, two neighboring countries, they are the one contributing to our climate change issues. Like, most of the issues, for example, as I said, the China is contributing 29% of the CO2 emission at a global level, which is directly affecting our mountains, our Himalayas. Similarly, the northern region of India is very hot, and the heat waves coming from there that will have a multiple implication, including forest fires and others. So that's why there is a need to have a regional or even the global cooperation. The global cooperation, obvious, but more importantly, probably we need to look at it at a regional level also. For example, Tarai, which is flooding in Nepal, is not only the issue of Nepal, but also the issue of India. As I said in the environmental eco disaster, the theory of environmental degradations of 1960s, 70s at that time. So that will have an implication for Nepal and also to India and Bangladesh and even to some extent in the Sri Lanka. So it means like, there is a regional connection of those intervention and we need to resolve or address that issue at regionally, at collective level. So one country alone cannot do actually. Even India alone cannot do because we need to protect our Himalayas on the top. Similarly, Bangladesh alone cannot really protect their flooding issues, the challenge of flooding in Bangladesh. So that will have implication and the Nepal can contribute on protecting that. So that's why
Yes.
I personally think that there should be a regional cooperation at the same time. Of
Yeah.
course, the country of conference of parties, the COP is there, but they only deal with the at the global level and the major agenda. But at regional level, with a more focused collaboration, probably is missing. That's what I say.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dahal. And now with this, we come into the question and answering session. I would like to express our sincere thanks once again to Dr. Dahal for his excellent presentation and very thoughtful responses during the discussions. Your insights have certainly added a great value to today's webinar. Now we think we are now better informed on climate change and the regional and also the global issue that
Yeah,
you picked up, and are slightly more alarmed in a good way. I think you have given us a tool and urgency to act,
yeah,
and not just an anecdotes to quote. I heartfelt thank to you all, our participants, for your time and attention. Uh, as mentioned earlier, a recording of this session will be available on the CNS UK YouTube channel very shortly. Now, I think we have come toward the closing.
mhm,
Before we conclude, I have to remind you, I'm pleased to inform you that our eighth session of Nepal Dialogue UK webinar series will be held on the next month, Saturday, 2nd of August, 2025. At the same time and in same Zoom address, the title of the talk will be Crossing Borders, the Global Reach of Nepali Literature. That will be totally in different front of today, from today.